The Battle of the Somme in World War I, SOMME, 1 million people were killed or injured in one battle. And so this is the type of understanding of male sacrifice and male disposability that has not been honored by feminists. I've never heard of a feminist saying we really need to sort of pray with thanks for the men who have died so we can live.
That I thought if I worked hard enough, I could have equality with men in my career, or I could have equality with my husband at home. They weren't true in reality. And when I started looking at the data, I realized that this wasn't just me. The problems that we were facing were structural. And that's what inspired me to want to share the solutions then that were also coming out of the research that I was doing with more people.
We should stop marrying men, according to the data. This professor says we're dating all wrong, that women are interviewing men as boyfriends rather than life partners. This leaves us stuck with junior employees of the household rather than co-CEOs. Corrine Low used to be married to a man. Now she's married to a woman. After her divorce, she crunched the numbers and decided that it would be more efficient to only date women. As a professor at Wharton, she's encouraging women to think like an economist when it comes to picking the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. We should see dating as a market, marriage as a contract, and children as a public good. We should see our time as having almost economic value, which we should spend carefully. This is an economist's evidence-based approach to happiness.
And you lived the transition from what you thought was sort of a righteous, empowering version of feminism to this, to something that I would consider quite toxic.
Yeah, and I remember, the beginning of feminism was exactly what I wanted for women, which was, you heard constantly, I am woman, I am strong, the Helen Reddy song. And it went from I am woman, I am strong to I am woman, I've been wronged.
You guys, of course, know that I'm a big fan of Warren Farrell. He's speaking here about, in the beginning, when he was a staunch feminist, he liked the environment that feminism found itself in, where it was empowering women to make choices that would shape their lives. But he saw that evolve into something that basically turned women into victims, no matter how you slice the cake. And he basically was canceled because he had views that were not very convenient with that movement. And he talks about the sacrifice, the expectation of male sacrifice, that men are disposable. That's gone nowhere. And so now, sometimes you hear young ladies say simply,
some guys are complaining. I would really like for you to think about the fact that men used to get shipped off to Vietnam at 17. And now, your guys' biggest problems are Zyn flavors, drinking, and sports that you're not even taking part in.
I am woman, I've been wronged. And, and that did create victim power. There was, we have, for example, the men die earlier than women do in 14 out of 15 of the leading causes of death. And yet we have 8 federal offices of women's health and 0 federal offices of men's health. So the victim stance did create a type of victim power. But when people play the role of victim, you don't really respect them. And I want women to be respected, and I think we all do. And so it was like I felt they were undermining their respect, and they were also doing something else that was very damaging. In schools, I have talked to many, many college students and high school students, and they often say that I learned in junior high school that men are part of the patriarchy. That is, and the patriarchy makes rules to benefit men at the expense of women, is what they learn in school about themselves. They learn that the future is female. Now, how do you feel if you're growing up male and you're learning that the future is female? They're learning that masculinity is toxic, and of course, masculinity, parts of it are toxic, just like parts of femininity are toxic. But it's focused on that, and they're learning all these negative things about themselves. And I've heard high school student and college student, one after the other, saying, it feels to me like I wish I wasn't born male.
Can you imagine, as an educator, having a young student come to you and say they feel bad about the way that they were born? Now, I'm not going to say that this is not something that women faced in the past, because we know that in the past they did deal with, or at least some ladies that maybe wanted to be doctors or something more than the traditional roles, and they met opposition. But going to the other extreme is not a salvation. It's not a fix for trying to overcorrect, right? If you overcorrect, then essentially you're taking the guys that you need to basically build your society and tell them that they're faulty. And there's a price to be paid for that.
So what does the data show in terms of why it's so difficult right now for women to quote unquote have it all, and what they can do to hopefully make their lives a little bit more manageable and more enjoyable too?
So once I tell people the stats, it always helps them just feel that sense of relief, because what has happened is gender roles have converged in the workplace, but they haven't converged at home. So women are stepping up, our careers are ever more demanding at work, but at home, men actually do the same amount of housework that they did in the 1970s.
What are the consequences? So we've talked about where the boy crisis came from.
Yes.
But what are the consequences for civil society? Obviously, the family's broken, but build it out.
Yes. Well, Jerome Powell put his fingers on one of them on 60 Minutes about 2018, and he said that one of the consequences, he said that the second biggest threat to our economic security is the problems that boys are going through.
If you've worked with data points in the past, you know that there are ways that you can manipulate your data, especially if it's coming from real world situations, to substantiate your point. And one of the things that happens in this internet era is that when we have a point of view, we can simply just go find data that supports our point of view. And so this is a Wharton professor essentially saying that in 55 years, men have not picked up a wash towel and are essentially acting the same way as men did in the 1970s. I find that very hard to believe, but if she runs a study that tends toward that, then she's going to be able to use that, and then young ladies going to hear that information, and they're going to say men haven't evolved in 60 years. And then you have Jerome Powell, who's looking at different data sets of numbers. And although these numbers may not be directly in conflict with each other, I have to go with Jerome Powell, because you don't get to where he got to if you don't know how to play with numbers that you like and don't like.
Because boys are crucial to being able to build a strong society, to be able to build a strong economy. They're the ones much more likely to go to war. In the United States, they're the only ones that are required to register for the draft at age 18. And so if we lose them, and we lose boys being effective, they're not going to be able to build good AI. They're not going to be able to, to participate when we need them in these types of activities. And so he said this was the second biggest cause of worrying about our future in terms of defense and economic growth.
This is the unfortunate part that comes with modern feminism, because it seems as if some feminists believe that this is a zero-sum game and that men have to lose in order for women to win. But the truth is, if men lose, we're all going to lose. That's just the way it works, because men aren't going to build anything. Our infrastructure is going to crumble. The innovation that's going to be necessary to be competitive in the next few decades is not going to be there. And you're basically going to have young ladies looking around saying, you guys are losers. Why didn't you do anything? But then you had the same young people growing up in school basically thinking that they're defective because they are what they are as boys. Lose. Somebody's got to fix this.
And he was very much a believer in what I was coming to believe in at that point in time, which was that there was that the feminist movement had really gone too far, and that the demonizing of men was not healthy for anybody, and that the family was really important, and the family is really the one of the single. You have a strong family, and you have faith, you're going to have much less need for government.
Yeah, I start the book by saying in 2017 I gave birth to my son, but also a midlife crisis, because a lot of the things that I thought were going to be true in my life, that I thought if I worked hard enough I could have equality with men in my career, or I could have equality with my husband at home, they weren't true in reality.
There's been no gratitude among feminists toward men, and that lack of gratitude has sunk into the culture to such a degree that when on TikTok recently there was a comment saying that that men commit suicide 4 times as often as women do. And the response of somebody there was the rate should be higher and for men committing suicide. And 7,000 people liked that with a heart.
Yeah.
And so when that type of attitude on just one social media post comes across in those types of numbers, we know we're in a sick place.
B.J. Ibmore often speaks of the point that you're going to hear Warren Farrell speak on in a moment, in that it's the environment that's shaping all of this. If you're a young woman and you have a decent job, you have your apartment, you have your cat or dog, you are basically only needing to date across and up. And if you are a high achiever like the Wharton professor, she's saying she wants a co-CEO. She doesn't want a stay-at-home husband. She wants to marry across and up. And if she can't have that, then she'll have a relationship with a woman, I suppose. But in a society, well, the ones that are quite advanced, if half of those good jobs are going to women, then she's essentially saying that half of the men in that society, or any man in that society below her, is unnecessary in her life, which in a way is not really equality, is it? Because if you're not going to marry down, then you're just going to have a group of women that just simply look down on more and more men, something that we've come to understand.
We got to figure out this new world where we have abundance that is so radically different than the entire history of the human species.
Yes, that's exactly the big. You separate. This issue is an issue in societies that are in the developed world and that are the middle to upper middle class in the developed world. It's because it's the difference happens when survival is no longer the controlling issues. Feminists say, oh, the world was controlled by patriarchy. No, it wasn't controlled by patriarchy. It was controlled by the need to survive. In order to survive, both men and women did not have rights. You never heard our grandparents talking about rights, women or men. They had two things, responsibilities and obligations.
It's a very good but simple point that he makes here, that when we speak of our grandparents, they were closer to the we have to do what we have to survive than to the I want a certain lifestyle. And so when you hear young ladies talking about lifestyle and I need a man that can take me around the world or buy me X carat ring, we're far removed from survival. And so in that environment, what are average guys to do? They just don't bother with going on dating apps, don't try to ask young ladies out, because the average young lady is asking for more than men have ever been expected to provide before. Before, providing was, here's a house, I will keep you safe in the house, and I'll make sure there's food on the table, and perhaps a car to drive, and with all of that, you're going to get protection. And for your end of the bargain, you know your social roles because they're quite defined. Now we've ripped all of that up. And we're trying to figure out, well, what do we do now? Well, the truth of the matter is, if you listen to Dr. Warren Farrell, feminism has simply gone too far. Because now they're rejecting men in the places that they would have been in, where he stayed at home and took care of kids. And now young ladies are simply saying, if I can't get a rich man, then you're not worth my time at all. And you can't build any kind of healthy society on that. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment below. I'll catch you next video. Take care, guys.